Hello, everyone. This is Enough to Keep Going, episode 89, Deep Dive. We're going to talk about some news. I am your host tonight, SwissGuard. I'm joined by two of my good friends, Osiris Prime.
Hello, everybody.
Fresh from Star Wars Celebration, I believe.
That's right. I went Sunday. It's pretty cool.
And we also are joined by Agasicles Stamas. How are you doing, Agasicles?
Good, man. Congratulations on your smoothest opening ever. That was well played, sir.
Well, it's kind of a low bar to clear. Yeah, I usually well, there goes all my momentum. So now we're back to we're back to the typical SwissGuard awkward host opening. So tonight we with Deep Dive we all kind of curate various news items throughout the prior fortnight, and we vote and we see kind of which ones bubble up. So the theme, I think, for tonight is going to be kind of like games, the medium, and the mission. So we're going to do some talk about how games are, how we consume games through the various console manufacturers and PC. And sorry. Excuse me. And then perhaps if we have time, a little talk about how, the games actually themselves work as entertainment. We'll see if we get there, though, because we all like hearing ourselves talk, and our discussions tend to linger. Except for me. I'm not going to be able to talk much tonight because I'm still fighting off this cold. Man. All right. So, first story. Agasicles, did you find this one about the video games moving to the Netflix model and the impact on localization, which is kind of a different take than I've seen in most of the media talking about, Google Stadia and Apple Arcade. Was that posted by you?
Yes. Yeah, it was.
What tickled your fancy about the story?
I will tell you as soon as I can find it again, because I think I
check the agenda. It's all there.
I've got the agenda. I think I inadvertently closed it because I had a document up that I didn't want people to be able to see, but I didn't realize that the news stories were actually in my Edge browser, not in Chrome. What tickled my fancy about it is, a lot of the it's there. I didn't realize that was still open. So is a lot of, there's a lot of generic themes going on. Not generic themes, but there's several themes that were going on over the last week. And one of the things that we do on this show is we don't just report on the news. We try and piece the news together and kind of like Bones or Sherlock Holmes. We try and figure out what are the recurring themes that are going on around the industry so we can talk about them thematically and holistically, not just in their pieces parts. So we don't really do like a news hits kind of show anymore. And one of the themes that has definitely been going on since since GDC has been the burgeoning thunder roll of I don't want to say games as a service because it's more than that. It's game services. So because I think when we talk about games as a service, we talk about Destiny and we talk about The Division and games that are falling into that paradigm. But what is clearly on the horizon is Microsoft's intention to roll out a big gaming service as part of the launch of Xbox Scarlet. You have Google also making moves. EA has announced that they will be able to essentially live stream games to your location. And so one of the things that has been foremost on our mind in particular is, but how does that work, like financially? I will admit I hesitated and stood back from leaping to sign up for Games Pass because I wasn't absolutely certain, like I didn't know how that helped the gaming industry. And so this article is an analysis article that we found over on Slater.com, which postulates how the industry might pivot to where the primary means of obtaining games is more these kind of smorgasbord, all you can eat, big digital warehousing of games versus going out and incrementally buying your games either as physical copies or digitally.
The piece that like kind of interested me was the localization aspect of it. And when you're talking about like they said the content's going to be, quote, much smaller content packages that will be adapted, edited at higher frequency than before. And talking about the financial aspect, they're saying that these companies that specialize in localization are poised to see a big jump in their use and their revenue as a result.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting is as we go over this model, right, is that and I hate to use this term, but I'm going to continue to use it because I don't know of a better one. We've got to circle back and resolve this, and we lean on this term heavily, is the topic of accessibility. A lot of what will happen potentially in this new business model is you will have an increased democratization of those services and therefore access to games. When you remove the physical burden of somebody needing to obtain the hardware and you make it deliverable as just a service, now people don't necessarily need to have a physical footprint of a system that costs $300 or more available in their home. All they need to have is internet access. And, throughout the world, the availability of broadband differs, geographically. However, in areas where we fall down here in the United States on landline access of broadband, wireless access for broadband is much greater overseas because they're more dependent upon broadband because they don't have the ability to dig trenches like we do. And so in a lot of ways, they sometimes wind up maintaining a certain degree of parity, or at least parity as far as an increased number of people who are above that minimum threshold of being capable of being delivered services such as these. Now you tunnel that down into the localization aspect. So now you have more people who have access to high quality games. You therefore have more people gaming. What does that now mean? Well, what that now means is that now you need more people, more companies who can do the translations for those games. And the reason the industry uses the term localization is because it's more complex than just straight translation, because the problem with translation is in a lot of cases, different cultures, different languages don't have those words or phrases or connotations around a given thing. And so localization is more intense than just straight translation. They have to sometimes help interpret the intention behind a given word or phrase and convert that to the applicable equivalent in that culture.
When I read the article, I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical that the change in the medium is going to affect the localization. And the reason I say that is are we going to see a massive like the only way I can see localization demands increasing is if we have an increase in the number of games that are available. Whether Sony or Microsoft or Google puts out, new the newest Assassin's Creed or whatever, I feel like the localization is going to remain static. Fine. They're not putting the localization of Assassin's Creed Odyssey out in discrete, sprints like it's an agile release, but the content, the amount of dialogue and what have you isn't really going to change. It's all still going to be, they're going to have this set amount of information that they have to get translated. And is it really now with the streaming, like, are they really penetrating markets that have that have never seen a game before, like haven't seen PlayStation or Sony? Is this, I mean, is this really going to penetrate untapped gamers? Like, I'm not sure where the volume is going to come from.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, Brad.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't think they're going for, like some, desert somewhere or jungle deep in the, in the Amazon or anything like that. I know you're not trying to say that either, but I think they're so with these streaming services, you're going to have it on the browser, you can have it on your phone or tablet or anything like that. So, and I mean, literally anybody can just, obviously everybody has at least one of these, if even at least a phone. So they'll be able to have access to that, to that game. I think that's where they're going with that, is since so many people have, at least one or, possibly two devices or so, it's going to be a little bit better to pay, let's say $15.99 for this service, let's say, and you'll have access to, hundreds of games, maybe thousands of games, eventually, and you can just play it on your browser. You hook up, for most people, obviously, if it's you're a little bit more entrenched in gaming, you'll slap like a controller like device on the sides or whatever, and play like that. Maybe you just play on the touchscreen. That's fine too. But I think that's what they're going for. They're going for more of that. I don't want to say mom and pop, but I guess kind of mom and pop, and normal people. I shouldn't say normal people. I don't want to say normal people because not like we're not normal, but just people who normally wouldn't even pick up a game. Maybe they play something like Angry Birds or something, or whatever is popular right now. I know on a phone, but this is bringing an actual game, like full-fledged game, onto a phone or a tablet or anything like that. So I think that's maybe where they're trying to get to.
They do mention that localization means different, like you said, different pieces of hardware, but I still struggle to see how you're going to need a third party to. It's almost like you're expecting the third party to adapt the interface when they phrase it that way. So,
well, I think. Go ahead, Swiss.
Go ahead.
Well,
I was just going to say I'm not sure where I'm not sure where this volume of revenue is going to come from. Like, are you really going to farm out your interface to like this other company to modify it for each different medium, or is it just going to scale like a web page does and be responsive? And it's just, I think it's almost assuming that, man, Google Stadia is so awesome that there's going to be so many more people coming in and developing games and everything. They're going to need that to be able to, an indie developer is not going to be able to really easily translate the game unless they get this third-party service to do it. But that just strikes me as like a rehash of the whole App Store problem, where you have a proliferation of quickly, cheaply made software. Fine, now it's in 100 languages, but it's still quickly, cheaply made, and I don't see that's a sustainable threat to the big boys. And if you're talking about AAA and AA titles, it's not going to change. The localization isn't going to change. I mean, the content, the gaming content is going to remain. The amount of gaming content is going to remain relatively stable, I would guess.
I think it's going to be interesting to see, because I mean, within certain aspects of this, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not certain. But what I would say is, so one thing that's going to happen, I think, is that I think because these things function like big warehouses, and they're not as atomized, they're not as laser precise in the way that they function and work. Meaning, so today, when a publisher releases a game, they're very specific on where that game is distributed and where they're releasing and where they're publishing to, right? And in a lot of cases, I think what we're going to see here is, in a lot of cases, depending on the size of the game's not always localized, right, for given countries and given geographic regions, right? The publisher just goes, that game's not going to have a lot of uptake in that particular culture, and so we're not going to do a language translation, and we may not even publish it there. Because, of course, publishing it there also means submitting it to whatever various rating boards and government regulation review and all that kind of stuff. I think that's part of what happens with localization, is that all that paperwork prep and funneling through all those organizations is also one of the things that they handle. But like you mentioned, I think there is also additional development, right? In terms of, so Japanese reads right to left, not left to right, right? So that's going to mean inherently,
it can be any direction.
Okay, so yeah. So there's that, and there are other differences in user interfaces that are common, that are not necessarily what we come to expect in North America or the Western world. All those are things that are done in that localization approach. So my whole point is, I think what will happen is, because let's say a Netflix model is much more of a carpet bombing than laser precision targeting. What you're going to have, I think what you're going to see is you're going to put game X on our service. You don't get to pick and choose where it goes, right? These are the three buckets, right? And it either goes everywhere or to all like class A countries or whatever. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see people developing some kind of, I don't know if middleware is the right question, but I think you're going to see a propagation of localization, because my guess, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. It's weird sometimes the way software, sometimes because software scales, it means that we do less, right? So my thinking is when you have a Netflix-like games distribution service, what that's going to mean is nobody's going to want to sit there and have a sysop, right, sit there and check 56 boxes, right, declaring what country it goes to, right? You're going to get busheled kind of selections, right? Like I said, all Western countries, all Eastern countries, right, or something like that. And I think that localization is therefore going to need to happen. Now, I think in the case of something like a Google, I don't know that Google's not going to third-party outsource. Well, let's say Google may not third-party outsource localization, right? But EA might, because EA's corporate structure is one that doesn't necessarily bear that overhead, whereas that's more kind of akin to Google's core competencies, and so they might just do it themselves. So I think there's room in there for growth. I agree with you that it's not going to necessarily be prevalent everywhere, but I think in general we're just going to see more energy and more resources flowing to those services in order to compensate for the wider distribution of games.
I think that helps. Helps me kind of think about it in terms of the legalese, like, can be a barrier for publication in certain regions, and this removes that burden to a certain extent. All right. Excuse me. Prime, we have Xbox news today, so we're going to go from like the wide-ranging streaming of games to take it to like how some of the bigger players are going to approach this, and there's a little bit of news on that front for Microsoft today.
Yeah, so they had their Inside Xbox, I believe it's their quarterly show, where they like to drop a bunch of new news related items, and today they announced the new Xbox One S all digital edition, or as I've been seeing, Xbox One SAD. They dropped the edition part, so they dropped the E, which is, as you can, that's what my little title there is referring to. So this is, like I said, all digital, so there's no disc drive in it, for Blu-rays or DVDs or anything like that. Just a hard drive in there, and it does come with 3 games: Minecraft, Forza Horizon 3, Sea of Thieves, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it's basically just an S without the Blu-ray drive. This is all for the low price of $249.99, which, if you look around and say, let's say Amazon or Target, or I didn't check Walmart, but I'm sure it's the same there. That's the same price as an S right now with the disc drive, and that I looked at it, like I said, a couple different sites, and those sometimes do come with bundles. So I've seen ones with bundles with like 1 or 2 games or so. I think DB, who's not on tonight, but he put out there that there's one with like a 3-game bundle. So I'm not really sure where they're going with this system. Actually, because it's been leaked I don't know, a few weeks, maybe even like a month or so, that this was going to be coming out. Everyone was speculating about it, and I just don't know where they're coming up with this price, and why would they price it to what what it basically the base model is right now with the disk drive. I was actually
are they phasing the disk drive out? Like, is that SKU going away entirely?
They didn't say anything now, at least not that I've seen. I'm gonna.
I don't think it will, because I think you'll still have your people who want a console that they can play their 4K UHD Blu-rays on.
Yeah, and just to have physical discs, a lot of people still like that. But
I think this is a matter of MSRP, right? So I understand what Amazon and Best Buy and everybody is doing, but straight stick MSRP, this SKU is priced $50 less than their MSRP for the One S. Right.
I do get that.
Yeah.
But everybody out there is going to see the $250 already out there, and they're going to be like, well, what's the point of this? Why? I have all these DVDs and Blu-rays still. Why would I get that version? Like I said, I was actually thinking about it when I heard these rumors of getting, maybe trade in my old Xbox One. I think I mentioned past couple shows that I have my old Xbox One sitting here by my PC now. I'm using it on my monitor. I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll trade it out and get something a little bit faster, because it is a little bit slow when you're going through games and just even going through the menus and stuff. But I mean, I guess I could get it, but I don't know. The only other thing I maybe at this price point also is, I don't know if it has an SSD. It hasn't said it does, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't, because I'm sure they would have said, hey, we have an SSD in this machine also. So I doubt that price is. I don't know. It just boggled my mind why they priced it that way. But even you would have think something like this they would have had maybe a SKU that didn't have the games to them, and maybe the games, they're throwing the games in there, and then they think, okay, maybe that's, we'll bump it up to $250. That's, we're trying to offset the price. But these are some old games. You got Minecraft. Sea of Thieves is like a year old, and you got Forza Horizon 3, which is not even the newest Forza Horizon. So I don't know. It just boggles my mind, and maybe it's just because I'm tired and it's been a long day. I don't know, but I just thought it was kind of weird that that this was announced. And I guess kind of on the flip side, and maybe they should have actually led with this before they announced the digital version here. Real quick, is they also announced the Xbox Pass Ultimates, which combines both Xbox Live, and Game Pass into one service. So you get you can go online and all that stuff with Xbox Gold side, and then Game Pass is where you have 100 games plus every month or so, and they kind of switch the games out. But all that for $14.99 a month. So that's a fairly good deal. You get two services for $15 basically. So I don't know. I was just thinking about this earlier. Like, they probably should have led with this, and then kind of brought out the Xbox S digital version. Might have softened it a little bit more, maybe.
But the Xbox, the Game Pass Ultimate, that only saves you $5, right? Is it Xbox Live? Short of like going out and finding a deal, right? Xbox Live is $65 a year. So
it's usually about I think 60 or 70 or something like that.
Yeah, so the $5 a month extra on top of that, you're paying $60 a year instead of 65. I think they didn't lead with that because it's not really a big cost saver. It's a convenience saver, so that you could just click to auto renew or click to set up one thing. And hardware is always sexy. I think this is, and I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, so to speak. But I think I think this is one of those cases where this isn't for us, right? And I don't mean that because we're old. I mean that because both you and I have an Xbox One Scorpio. So no matter what, we were never going to care about the Xbox One S all digital, other than seeing it as being a harbinger of a telegraph of what we can start expecting from Scarlet, or at least some of the SKUs of Scarlet. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Prime.
Oh, I was just gonna say, now you said they're more, and obviously I don't know and you don't know, but for sure if the normal S is going to be still in production and still be going out there, but wouldn't you think they'd want to, like, if you see even just a normal Joe like going to a store like GameStop, maybe they'll skew over to the all digital edition a little bit more than the regular disc version, just because that's kind of what they do, or maybe even that, you know, Microsoft says, hey, you know, kind of, you know, sell this a little bit better. But if you go into like Target or Best Buy or Walmart, they're probably, I mean, it's just sitting there, and you're gonna be, you might get a little confused, like just regular Joe, obviously not us, but just regular Joe's gonna be like, wait a minute, so there's two versions, is one more powerful? You know, they're gonna just start asking questions, and I don't know, it might just kind of confuse them. You know.
I mean, I wonder if that's another reason why you price it at $250, right? Because I don't, as you talk through that, like, I don't know that this SKU is going to get a ton of shelf space. I mean, I'll be surprised if GameStop carries it at all, right? Because it is literally like carrying a suicide sword right in your own store, right? This is the thing that's designed to put GameStop out of business. So I don't know that it behooves them to carry it at all. And then I agree with you. You put this thing on the shelf at Target. I mean, with them both being the same color, this is a very dangerous thing, I think, for Best Buy or Target, but maybe not so much Best Buy, but Target or Walmart, to put on their shelves right next to the Xbox One S with a disc, especially during holiday season when people are in a rush and parents get sent into stores to get a thing for a kid, and then they bring it home and the kid's like, I have Blu-rays. I have physical copies of discs. The other thing that was interesting is, and I'm surprised it didn't get a lot of headlines, was it part of the story in the walk up to this thing coming out, is that there was going to be some type of ownership transfer program, right? I mean, I mean, that was actually the thing that was somewhere in history. There was some talk of like what you would do if an all digital, if Microsoft, when Microsoft put out an all digital console, right? And maybe that was what was originally for the Xbox One launch when they were still talking about backwards compatibility. But I thought there was talk of like, well, what happens with all my owned physical games if I get an all digital console? That there was supposed to be some means of like transferring ownership to a digital copy.
Yeah, I think I remember. Well, yeah, I know initially with the Xbox One, originally when it was coming out, they're talking about that. And now that you're talking about it now, I thought I had heard something about, you know, you may even be able to, like, I don't know if you send in the disc or something and they send you a code or something like that, or you know, it just becomes, I guess because it's on your system somehow it gets transferred. I don't know. I didn't hear anything about that. I didn't see anything about that. Unfortunately, I didn't actually sit down and watch the inside Xbox. I just kind of saw it on Twitter as it was happening, and you know, going on Major Nelson's Twitter also, and you know, finding out information like that. So I'll have to just, you know, sit down and watch the whole thing eventually and see if they mention anything else about that. Swiss, any thoughts? I know you're not an Xbox guy, but
yeah, so I'm a little confused about it too. The only way it makes sense to me is if it's like if it's the replacement SKU and they're just going to kind of let the existing disc-based Xbox One S's kind of wither and kind of go away through attrition. Otherwise, it would make more sense to me for them to have a different price point so people can kind of compare, like, well, I'll you know, save $20 and just not worry about the discs or whatever. Any last comments on on Microsoft before we go to Blue, Team Blue? All right, I'm going to throw this story to Agasicles because it is very hardware centric, and that's what gets Agasicles up every morning. So, Sony, yeah, Sony has. All right, I'm naive. Sorry.
yes, I tripped you up again. That's twice in one episode.
Wired has an exclusive story about what to expect from Sony's next-gen PlayStation console. They didn't get into details about what's coming down the pike as far as like services or anything, but they did talk about hardware, computer hardware, PC hardware. I mean, it's all computer components under the hood, console hardware, and what we can look forward to. So, Agasicles, if you'd like, go ahead and give us a summary, and then proceed into your requisite Sony flaming, Sony hatred.
Yeah, you would be accurate about my response to this in some ways. So all the word on the hardware front is good. Unfortunately, the article I'm looking at doesn't necessarily have just a plain text roll up, but they say to expect third generation AMD Ryzen processors, which, as far as I know, are not available right now. We're still sourcing and bidding parts for second gen. So that again put some R&D distance into the roadmap for when this thing might eventually come out. It is also an AMD GPU, which is the norm based on AMD's 7 nanometer process. The big ticket item here that's a tell is that it is supposed to be an AMD GPU capable of ray tracing. NVIDIA has just rolled that out in their 20X series cards that just became available at the end of last year, beginning of this year. So again, we've got a little distance in the roadmap to go before that's realized. Go ahead, Prem.
I just wanted to mention it says it's a custom variant of the Radeon's Navi family. I don't know what that means. So you probably know what that is.
Yeah, that's always the case. The CPU, well, maybe not so much the CPU, but the GPU inside these consoles is always. It's not just a straight stick. Sorry, hold on a second. It's not just a straight stick like 590X part that you can pull off of a GPU PCB that goes in a PC. It's always something that's specifically customized for that particular piece of console hardware. The other things that I saw earlier today was that it would have an SSD, would be compatible with this current version of PlayStation VR. I thought I saw a mention of how much RAM it was going to have, but I don't recall that right now off the top of my head. So I'll dig around for some more specs. Oh, and so would support up to 8K resolutions, which I just think is ridiculous. But I think that's the tale of the tape right there. So what concerns me and what shapes my response to this is here we go again. And, I mean, applaud Sony for chasing after capabilities that formulate what we expect in like the next round of PCs. But in almost every instance across PlayStation 2, even PlayStation 1. So I don't know where it got ingrained in Sony engineering DNA, but the original PlayStation, of course, was originally engineered to be the optical drive / optical version of the of the GameCube, I think. Or am I too far ahead?
N64.
N64? Okay. So and then Nintendo dropped it. And then Sony said, well, fine, we'll use that R&D to make our own console. So in terms of the engineering path to get to that way, so you had an amount of technology that you had already built on Nintendo's dime. Maybe Sony had invested a little, but you had a starting point and some amount of tech that you had available for reuse. When the PlayStation 2 came along, and when PlayStation came out, relatively, nearly alongside the Sega Saturn, that made them the first optical drive gaming consoles. First optical drive 32-bit gaming consoles on the market. And I don't remember. I'd have to sit and read a little bit to remember where 3DO and CDI and all that other kind of stuff fell into that mix in comparison. But they were the first mainstream ones. So somewhere along the way, something got locked into Sony DNA that insists on them not just having frontline technology, but always having like a next innovation. And I guess eventually that works out for them in the long run, right? So the PlayStation 2, probably the best-selling DVD player from any single manufacturer during its generation, because a lot of people just bought the PlayStation 2 just to play DVDs. And I had a PlayStation 2, which spent a lot of time playing DVDs. It was the PlayStation 3 it was the specific processor that was in it, and with the PlayStation 4, it became the Blu-ray drive. But all of these things in that roadmap have always hung Sony up and delayed delivery of the console, or at least put them into a severe crunch to get it ready on time. More concerning is the fact that in each of those generations, there's been an uptick in price, scarce availability, and typically for capabilities that, at least for me as a gamer, I would just as soon have done without, right? So this is going to be an interesting thing to see how this plays out for PlayStation 5. What's very interesting, again, is Microsoft is decidedly not playing the spec game for Scarlet. They have one SKU, but I would contend that because of the way they delivered Scorpio, I feel like they have a head start on that SKU race as far as having an upper tech variant of that model line. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, the PlayStation 4 wound up being attractive to me only because it was $100 cheaper than the Xbox One. So if now there's no way that they're going to do that, because Xbox is going to have at least two SKUs, unquestionably, that will be less expensive than PlayStation 5. Now, again, for me, I'm always going to go for the high-performing hardware, so it's really going to come down to a matter of how does that console in price compare to whatever Xbox's leading console for next generation is from a price standpoint. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I took a little bit of a different tack. Like you didn't even touch on the thing that concerned me about. Well, price is going to be a concern. Like you said, features you don't care about. I don't care about 8K. I don't even have a 4K TV. I have my 4K monitor on my PC, but I have my PlayStation hooked up to it. I haven't bought it, and because of that, I haven't even bought a PS4 Pro. Now,
right, and that's exactly what I meant by that capability that's going to drive their schedule and price that I could care less about.
And how much is the RTX stuff going to drive the price? What concerned me about the article was that like half the article was spent on one feature, and it was, let me see, I'm trying to find the quote, and like the dude was super excited about this, and like, so they're talking about he booted up Spider-Man on a PS4, and it took 15 seconds to do something to jump like from one part of the map to the other. He had a 15-second loading sequence. And then he put it on the dev kit for the next gen console, because they can't call it a PS5 yet, and it took 0.8 seconds. And he's like, "We're putting an SSD into it," and it's like, how long have SSDs been available? And I don't see this as game-changing technology. Maybe I'm naive about pricing, and they can just get spinning disks so cheap. That's how they saved money previously. But I'd rather them invest in an SSD than in 8K and ray tracing capability. It feels like they're excited about something that it's like, okay, you should have had this a long time ago. One interesting note, however, he says, excuse me, I'm sorry. Where is it? I got it in my notes. He says, quote, "We are cloud gaming pioneers, and our vision should become clear as we head towards launch." And I'm thinking, okay, so this whole article is about how you have 8K capability, ray tracing, and an SSD. I mean, an SSD. So what's so cloud centric about that? Because when I think cloud, I think Google Stadia. And I understand, like, okay, maybe it's going to be able to download games or anything super fast, or okay, you got good bandwidth, you get it downloaded, and great. I don't understand how that comment really synchronizes with the rest of this, because we already have games that you download. It's not exciting to me. One, maybe this is completely off the wall, crazy speculation on my part, but I'm wondering, didn't we hear stuff about kind of this hybrid setup, some hybrid setups where you may have some assets local and then you stream other assets from the cloud? I think, though, it came from Microsoft, if I'm not mistaken, at one of their press conferences a while back. I'm kind of curious if that's how they're going to play this. Like,
I think I could definitely see them playing, because they do this now where you go to download Call of Duty Black Ops in the game, and the PlayStation asks you, do you want to play multiplayer first or single player? And you pick which one, and it delivers that part of the content. And then, much like happens on the Origin client and stuff on PC, then the game says, hey, at 42%, you can go ahead and start playing the game. So what I suspect, what I believe it'll be, is this is going to be something akin to, Google has something like this on Android, instant apps. Although I'm absolutely convinced nothing about it on Sony and the PlayStation will be anywhere near instant. But I think there will be this notion that your library, at least an index of it, is in the cloud, and that there might be some smart shuffling management of storage that kind of manages your local files that you have available. My problem with this is, we were talking about this earlier in a Facebook group that I was in, when somebody raised the head of Xbox versus PlayStation, and claimed that the PlayStation 4 was smoother and blah blah blah, and I was like, I don't want to hear it. Right? First of all, console wars are over. I don't even want to have this discussion. However, what I will say is, like, of the two consoles, the one that drives me flipping nuts with management of, still to this day, right, 5 years into the life cycle of 6 years into the life cycle of this console, it drives me absolutely batty how the PlayStation manages updates and installs. Right? You put the disc in, the thing says that it's installing the game. It reports back, the game is installed and ready for play. You start the game up, it immediately says, congratulations, there's an update available. I have to download that first. I'm like, well, don't tell me that you have the game installed if you know that you need to have an update. And why did the game not autonomously go from first installation off the disk directly to doing an update? Then you download the update, and what happens? It just downloads, and it says that I want to say that it says it's installed and available. You go to hit that, it's not installed, it's just downloaded, and then it actually has to run the installation routine. So it's a 3-step hop to get any game up and running on the PlayStation, from buying a disc to actually being able to play the game. And that's frustrating and inane and stupid. And it's degrading to a company that's supposed to be a Class A engineering organization. Like, I don't understand it, and you don't get that behavior on Xbox. So again, if I have to rank, like, between the consoles, like, who I expect, like, high quality cloud-based, web-based, service-based experiences from,
Nintendo.
I was going to say PlayStation still to this day is barely like a breaststroke above Nintendo, because at least Nintendo, I don't expect it from them. So when they fall on their face, I'm kind of like, well, that's Nintendo. But Sony, I feel like you've been at this game long enough that you should have figured this stuff out. So yeah, I don't expect anything like flipping, like, rocket science level, or or certainly nothing that whoops Azure's butt, right, for Microsoft coming from the Sony camp. And like you said, Swiss, the sparklingly far-reaching details of the technical specifications, which apparently Mark Cerny was hyper-focused on and spent a lot of his time conveying, doesn't tell me that this is a console that's heavily leveraging, like, a cloud backbone.
Yeah, I've been a PlayStation person, like, on having a PlayStation since the PS2. You know, I was a Nintendo kid, um, and I didn't have a PS1. I got a PS2 and had played a bunch of PS2 games and a lot of the PS1 classics. That did I don't remember. Did you mention that it's going to be backwards compatible with the PS4? Therefore, it is going to have an optical drive, I assume.
You know, it's yeah,
That's
but
that yeah, you never know. So
yeah, I suspect that that'll be something that's similar to PlayStation now.
they did yeah, if it is. I just remember like you had the whole game with the PS3 was PS2 compatible for like a day, and then that SKU went away and it wasn't anymore. So um but this is the first time I'm actually considering on the next generation where it's like not inevitable that I get a Sony system. And it's just I feel like what I hear out of Microsoft and being simpatico with Nintendo and everything, it just and now that so many games, like you said, the console wars are practically over. Now that so many games are on all of them, it doesn't really matter. Plus, you know, PC Master Race. So, but you know, we'll see. I'll probably end up still getting a Sony, but I'm afraid that if I'm going to sit there and justify a $600, you know, initial release, and then Microsoft sitting there at like $399 or $349 with a very capable console, I don't know what they're going to do, and we might have a rehash of the PS3, Xbox 360 fiasco all over again.
Well, what'll be interesting, and again, there are aspects of things that sound good but cause me worry on the back end. Is I worry that Microsoft puts themselves at a disadvantaged pricing position because people go right when they juggle the numbers and they're like, well, I can go buy you know the Chromecast version of Scarlet for $50 and play Xbox One games, right? Because I have a broadband connection, right? And play the same Xbox One games that guy can play over there with his $500 Xbox Two Scorpio, and then I can take those remaining fungible resources and go buy the PlayStation. So you could have big PlayStation, little Xbox, and still have access to the same content. In the meantime, meaning, you know, Sony trots away with another 90 million consoles sold at $500 a pop, and Xbox has maybe more units, right? But they're just not capturing that revenue with that margin.
Prime, you asked me about Xbox, so I'm going to ask you about Sony. You have any comments on the PS5? Does it entice you?
No, just because I'm not a Sony guy. I mean, I had a PlayStation 2 and original PlayStation and PlayStation 2 back in the day, but after that it was pretty much Xbox. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know, because I mean, this is just giving us the specs of the somewhat of the system. It seems fine. I mean, sure, okay. I mean, this all these articles I've been seeing, it's just throwing all these specs and stuff. It's just like the old 8-bit, 16-bit, going back and forth. Oh, I have 16-bit now, and so this console is better. And I know that's not what they're probably going for. They're just they're throwing little bits and pieces of what the next PlayStation is going to be. So obviously they're going to start with hardware. I think both companies, or all companies, maybe not Nintendo, but Xbox and PlayStation, they do that. They'll throw out the specs first and then kind of build on that. And the only thing, I guess, it was the same thing that you had said about they're the pioneers of cloud services or cloud gaming. Excuse me. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I don't know about that, but we'll just have to see what's going to happen. But I guess it just kind of irked me about all these articles, and they're just emphasizing the backwards compatibility and all this other stuff that all these other systems already been doing, and I don't know why it's a big deal now. Sony's doing it now. I don't know if it's like the Apple effect. It's the Sony effect now. It's the PlayStation effect because it's the big thing right now. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Coming up, hopefully during E3 we'll find something, or even before maybe.
Well, so Sony's not going to E3 this year.
No, I mean on the Xbox side, like what they're going to bring, with the Scarlet or the family of, that whole thing, how they're. I find that kind of annoying too, though, that they're going to piece out. There's going to be this like Agasicles said, there's going to be the Chromecast version, and there's going to be this mid-range, and then there's going to be the high-end. It's like, I don't know. I think it's just getting a little bit too much now. Just give me one console, and I guess it's all kind of moot because when Switch Pro comes out, I'm just going to drop everything else. So I'll be good.
Well, it's an interesting new world, right? A new paradigm, because I would say my feeling is like historically, this is old form for Sony trumpeting the backwards compatibility, right? Which normally has been their thing, right? You could play PS1 games on PS2, you could play PS2 games on PS3. For PS4 was the first time that they had dropped the notion of backwards compatibility. And Xbox has historically never cared about backwards compatibility, and I've aligned with that feeling that like the people who talked at loud volumes about being angry about the lack of backwards compatibility were really just, well, we're full of poo, right? Because they didn't really play the old games; they were just bent out of shape because they couldn't. So, but and now in the span of a year, the two companies, well, Microsoft has pivoted hard towards backwards compatibility and become the darling and the popular company amongst gamers for making that accessible, whereas Sony still struggles with its PlayStation Now service, and I think has tarnished their reputation to the point where even though now they make those games available for download, which originally was not their shtick. You would have to play them over a streaming service, and there were hiccups and latency and lag with that. But nobody cares and nobody's listening, right? It's if they didn't jump on the bandwagon with PlayStation Now originally because they wouldn't allow downloads, it's not like that's been a corrective action that has gotten a lot of people on board. So it's interesting to me for Sony coming out of the gates to go back to their old form and say, hey, backwards compatibility out of the gate. Although I'm still waiting for that to be a bamboozle and for them to say, hey, your backwards compatibility is via PlayStation Now.
Well, I mean, if it turns out to just be kind of like, I mean, the one hand they're like talking at the beginning how this is like what'd they say? A true generational shift tends to include a few foundational adjustments. And they're talking about like it's like some revolution in hardware, but it doesn't really. It's like, okay, you're building a console with current technology, makes sense. So, and to be honest, that's all I care about. It's not going to be hard for me to like buy a new PlayStation, as long as they don't price it to an insane level. That's like the only thing that concerns me, because
$700.
As long as they don't tell you that you'll work a second job to have the honor of being able to afford a PlayStation 5.
So we'll see. I mean, more and more I'm moving to the PC now anyways, and just because I don't have to pay money to play online, and I don't know. I just
not yet.
We'll see. But Bennett, does anybody have any last comments on gaming media?
I guess the last thing I just wanted to say real quick was, and actually it was an article from IGN that I forgot I was going to post it on the news section when this came out for the PS5 or next PlayStation, excuse me, was that the gentleman, Joe Scribbles, I think that's how you say his name, Scribbles. He was saying, this is just his opinion, he was saying how this is, this sounds like a PS4 Deluxe, basically. And that's what everybody wants. I mean, really, does everybody want just like for the actual next PS, the next iteration of the console, PS5, which I'm assuming that's what it's going to be called. This is the next gen console. They just want like a little bit of a bump here and there on everything, and that's it. I mean, really, is that what people want?
I don't think that's what people want, and I'm sorry to say it this way, but I think that's somebody who doesn't understand computer technology.
Yeah, I have to post that article out there just so you can read it. And I don't know. I just obviously I have my I'm not a big PS5 guy, but I was like or PlayStation guy, but I was like I don't know if that's what people want out there. I mean, but that's just me.
No, and well, it to a certain extent, right? In an era where these consoles are x86 platforms, he's right in that. Yeah, guess what? every next generation of PC technology is just a buff of the last generation, right? New architectures and completely new components and new buses come along very rarely, right? Generally, every 5 years, what you get is you get the next faster Intel Core thing, right? And you get the next NVIDIA and AMD GPUs. And if that's what he means, yes, the pattern for the Cadillac hasn't changed. We're just putting different parts on the chassis. But in terms of microcircuit architectures and integrated circuit architectures, it's a new beast. It is not a PlayStation 4 Pro Plus.
All right, Agasicles, you got any E2KG plugs you'd like to share?
No. Next week is a GX show episode, so we'll be here talking about the games that we've all been enjoying playing, and it should be pretty exciting because we've all been playing a bunch of new games and new experiences, so it should be pretty interesting.
The games of spring.
I think it's all of us too, isn't it? I believe.
No, I'm off.
So you off? Oh, okay.
Can heal my vocal cords.
All right. Well, that's
all right then. So I guess that will do it for us. We had a lot more stories, but we didn't get to them. We didn't get to mention, the new Star Wars game coming or anything like that. But there'll be plenty of news trickling out about Jedi Fallen Order in the coming months, and we can get our thoughts then. All right, so for Osiris Prime, Agasicles, Stamas, I am SwissGuard. Thank you for listening. Keep on gaming.